When it comes to the Niger Delta, there is always so much to explore, from its vibrant culture to incredible achievements in various aspects of life, and so much more. This is Niger Delta Today on ADBN Television, a program that brings you the latest news, in-depth analysis, and insightful discussions about one of Nigeria's most dynamic regions, the Niger Delta. We'll also bring you stories that matter within this unique area. Niger Delta Today is designed to inform, educate, and inspire our audience by focusing on topics ranging from environmental challenges and economic developments to cultural heritage and community initiatives. I am Awero Swogene Ebo. Welcome to the program. The federal government has disagreed with legal luminary Agboka's call to repeal Petroleum Industry Act. The Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, is to play chief host at the upcoming Niger Delta Development Commission Summit. Former Cross River governors and others kick against inclusion of Abi and Yakar in proposed Ogoja state creation. Before we go into further details, let me introduce my dynamic and insightful co-host on the program today, a seasoned journalist with a lot of experience covering the Niger Delta region with a deep understanding of the local culture and issues. Her experience combined with engaging presentation style makes her a favorite among our viewers. I'm talking about none other than Jennifer Pius.
Well, I'm feeling blown away right
now. Oh my goodness. Good afternoon, Jennifer.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you.
Ooh, thank you for joining me on the program today.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go into the details that we have for you today. The federal government has disagreed with the legal luminary and former chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olisa Agbakoba's call to repeal the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 because, in his opinion, it is full of errors and doesn't serve the nation's best interests. He alleged that the agencies, totaling about 6, have overlapping functions, making them inefficient and supposedly confused with regards to their roles. Rather, he proposed that, like Saudi Arabia, there should be one minister for energy who covers electricity, hydrocarbon, and related offices. Now, when it comes to the PIA, Jennifer, he's calling for a repeal at this time where we have gone far with making sure that everything is in place with the Petroleum Industry Act. How practicable do you think this is?
Well, I believe that for whatever reasons which he has stated that he's noticed some errors in the PIA. Now, let's even go back to before the establishment and the enactment of the PIA. Now, there were several stakeholders meetings.
Yes.
There were interactive sessions where opinion and ideas were shared.
Brainstorming.
Exactly. So my question will now take us to why now? Because these issues would have been addressed long before now.
Yes.
Before the enactment. So it also brings into play the ideology of we Nigerians sometimes display. Like now, prior to the Senate discussion on the amendment of the Constitution, now lots of stakeholder meetings were held. And people were invited to air their opinion. And you hear some people say, oh, how is that supposed to be any of my
Do you
business?
think he was in the country as at that time?
No, I'm just I'm just saying, now, why would you bring this up now?
Okay.
But even if there are issues with that, there are appropriate quarters and measures which you should take to ensure that your opinion is heard. Calling us to talk about it in the media may not necessarily put out what should be done.
Okay.
So if you feel there are errors, follow the due process. Now, the PIA was meant to address some of the challenges of oil-producing states.
Exactly.
Now, not just for oil-producing states, states which also enjoys the resources of the oil.
Okay.
So now, it means that they had taken into consideration the NNPCL.
Yes.
It also means they had taken into consideration the people, the environment, climate change issues, because it came in at a point where the whole talk on climate change is so much. So it means there were considerations on that. So if you've noticed, there are errors.
Yeah.
You mentioned multiplicity of roles.
Yes, overlapping roles.
Now, when you say overlapping of roles, there are mandates for each institution. The NNPCL, downstream and the upstream.
Yeah.
And there are roles shared in between. There might be similarities in one or two because, of course, it's oil and gas. So there will be a few shared roles. But, well, like I said, I think we'll just have to go through the appropriate measure to air his opinion on how this can be sorted out.
Now, he's comparing Nigeria when it comes to the PIA with Saudi Arabia.
Well,
Saudi Arabia has a centralized system of government where everything is placed under a single minister. For instance, if we were to call for this repeal, as he has put forward, what happens in the meantime when these changes are being effected?
now,
Has he thought of all those things before this repeal that he's clamoring for?
well, as you've mentioned, Saudi Arabia has a single minister.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, we have the Minister of State for Oil, we have the Minister of State for gas, which means that there is a bit of division for oil and gas sector. So now, if you're calling for a repeal, it means we will also have to go through another process of looking at which minister, or in fact, merging roles too. Won't that be so much work? So I think he also has to consider some of the factors. We can't compare Nigeria to Saudi Arabia. We are still making plans, developing certain areas, certain infrastructures. And Saudi Arabia, they are a bit advanced. So it's a process thing, step by step. Okay,
so you're trying to say even if he's calling us back to the drawing board after noting these mistakes, we shouldn't hit the call because it's going to take another long time.
Not necessarily not hit the call. Let him follow the due process. Calling for a media or stakeholder meeting, go through the process. If you notice the changes, there are measures which you can take for an amendment. So I think that's...
And there are other pressing issues because this is going to bring to the table various stakeholders like the federal government, state government, and the industry players when it comes to petroleum.
In fact, there are people who would even wake up to some other issues. So say, oh, wow, you have mentioned this one.
It has been overrun by events. Let's wait for that. Okay. Thank you so very much for that, Jennifer. Moving on now, the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, is set to host the forthcoming Niger Delta Summit, featuring an array of prominent leaders, including former President Goodluck Jonathan and Senate President Senator Gosulobot Akpabio.
The reason for this is to engage the stakeholders on the development of the Niger Delta. How do we impact on the 7 developmental strides of Mr. President in the Niger Delta? We're talking about security, we're talking about the economy, we're talking about infrastructural development, we're talking about creative arts, and so on and so on. So how do we sustain this to enable the peaceful nature of Niger Delta to continue? And these are the issues that we will discuss in this summit. We're inviting everybody from the Niger Delta region and the entire Nigeria. Time for everybody to come and make your own view known to us.
The NDDC Managing Director, Dr. Samuel Ogbuku, made the announcement during a press conference in Port Harcourt, stressing that former President Goodluck Jonathan will serve as a special guest of honor, while the Senate President, Senator Gosulobot Akpabio, will be the chief host, being the highest political office holder in the region. The summit, which is scheduled to take place from July 10th to 13th, will have the Minister of the Niger Delta, Engineer Abubakar Momo, as co-host, with governors from the Niger Delta also in attendance. The summit, themed Renewed Hope for Sustainable Development of the Niger Delta region, aims to foster innovative ideas and strategies to accelerate development in the Niger Delta, aligning with President Bola Tinubu's Renewed Hope agenda.
We in NDDC, in implementing that aspect of Mr. President's agenda, are coming up with the Niger Delta Stakeholders Summit. We want to use this opportunity to encourage every delegate and stakeholder from the Niger Delta that we are going to discuss issues that affect the people of the Niger Delta. Let everybody come with an open mind to see that the renewed hope for sustainable development, which is the theme of the summit, is real. and it is something that will benefit everybody.
Dr. Ogbuku also highlighted that the summit will engage a broad range of stakeholders, including National Assembly members, regional ministers, traditional rulers, and private sector experts to discuss the future of the Niger Delta. Jennifer, we have a summit at hand.
Well, I think the NDDC, the management board, they've been making efforts to ensure that issues in the Niger Delta region are well addressed. Now, let's even address the issue of the NDDC. It is an interventionist agency, which means that they are supposed to look at what the people need in the region and bring in some form of relief to the people. Now, while it was established in, I think, June 2000, there was a mandate. And the mandate, majorly, is just to bring in rapid, sustainable development to the people of the region. Before the NDDC even came on board, in fact, there were some agitations. That's where we got the stories of the militants and all. There were a lot of agitations that the people of the Niger Delta region, you're taking the oil. You're taking the oil, but we are not having so much to show for that in terms of infrastructure, in terms of growth and development. So the NDDC came in as an interventionist agency. Now, over the years, there have been some form of advancement, I would say. There have been some projects initiated by the NDDC, and there have been some collaborations between the NDDC, the federal government, and state government in addressing the plight of the people in the Niger Delta region. So now I believe that because for a while there has been a change in boards, management, and all. And so the NDDC feels it is best to meet with stakeholders, address concerns. Now, just like I had mentioned with the PIA, now we are calling for stakeholders meeting. Who is attending?
You and I.
Exactly. Because the people of the region who should be in this meeting, some of them might feel...
it is just for the high and mighty.
Yes, exactly. This is a place where you air your concerns. Some people are, in fact, the NDDC, they've spoken about some stalled projects. There are projects which the NDDC had started some years back in some communities, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, rivers, in fact, across the states in the Niger Delta, stalled projects. And some contractors had abandoned those projects even while they had been paid, and maybe some other issues in between. So now, the people of the region, because if you look at some of those routes, let's take for instance, if you look at some of those routes now, as you've started something without completing them, it will begin to wear off and affect the people.
Because so over time, they are even supposed to be maintained after completion.
Exactly. So now it is time to now head back to the drawing board and discuss, where did we stop? What have we left behind? So now if you feel that your community is being marginalized, this is where to have the discussion. Exactly. We've had protests. So it is not just about protest. It is about you heading to the discussion table. This is our concern. This is what we need from the NDDC. If you're talking about roads, you're talking about schools, you're talking about health, the NDDC should also have an open ground for, in fact, I feel that the stakeholders meeting should not just be in Port Harcourt.
Should be in every state.
They should also look at other states in the region, go to these states, because not everyone would be able to reach out, head to Port Harcourt for the stakeholders meeting. Okay,
so you are suggesting that the summits, the stakeholders meeting should be held in individual states of the Niger Delta. Okay.
And then the people of the community should also liaise amongst themselves. Oh, these are the...
Like a town hall meeting.
Exactly. So that is what should be done in every stakeholder meeting.
Okay, but the minister, the Commissioner for Finance in the NDDC just made mention of traditional rulers who are going to be in attendance. Do you think they do not have the right representation of their people for you to say that this meeting should be held in individual states of the NDDC?
Well, let me say that majority of the people who sometimes feel marginalized.
Like you don't know what is going there to say on our behalf.
Exactly. So I feel it should start from the community leaders.
Okay.
You meet with your people. Get from them, what do you need from the NDDC? Because they are leaders and they may not really know what exactly you need. Okay. Well, they will have their opinion, but then it is in your place to explain to them these are our needs. So it should begin from the community leaders. The community leaders now takes it to the NDDC. This is what our people are saying. So they can now juxtapose, or we could take this project first, look at the other project next. Okay. So it's not just about what the NDDC feels or what they think should be done. It is about the people. It is an interventionist agency. Exactly. It is an interventionist agency. So if the relief you're offering the people is not what they need, then it's not relief at all. Yes, it's not. So I would also that's where duplication of projects come in sometimes. Exactly. Yeah. So I would also commend them too for some of the projects they've embarked on. Like they've had medical outreaches. Yes. Conducted surgeries. There are people in the Niger Delta region going through several medical conditions. Some as a result of the contaminated air. Some as a result of activities of oil companies in the region. Yes. So the NDDC, they've been conducting medical outreaches in those communities, reaching out to the people, paying for medical bills, checkups and treatment. I would commend that because it's something that people need. Yeah. And also, they've also been conducting, going to recently, the East-West Road. They've mentioned that they would address the deplorable state of the East-West. Yes. We know how that came about. The flooding situation that had some years back, it affected the East-West Road. Yeah. And then we understand that the East-West Road is really important in terms of trade, commerce, connecting in the Niger Delta region. Together. So if that particular road gets fixed, well, the people would be completely relieved, should I say.
Now, speaking about the East-West Road, I'm very sure as that when those roads were being constructed, they were not done with rigid pavement. Like the Minister of Works has directed that every road constructed now should be done with rigid pavement. They said they last longer. And also there should be a maintenance culture to these roads. Because if you feel like after the rigid pavement is done, it's going to last for a period of 20 or 30 years, there should be a blueprint of what to be done after that time. And you talked about abandoned projects. Is it possible to blacklist some of these contractors that are abandoning their work?
Yeah, there was, I think as of last year, early last year, there was a meeting with the NDDC and their contractors. Okay. They had a meeting with contractors that work for the NDDC for all of their projects. Okay. Now, it was at the meeting that concerns were shared. This is where our problems are. And I think it was from there they terminated some contracts. Too. Yeah, yeah. So it's not... sometimes it may not come from the NDDC. Sometimes it could be from the contractor, and sometimes the community. Exactly. Now, let's take, for instance, the issue of solar-powered street lights. You go to a community, they install solar-powered street lights, and before it even takes up to a year, some of those solar panels, they are gone. So it's not just the NDDC doing the work now, the people too. You have to take responsibility for your project. You have to take responsibility for your community. Yeah. So, like, for instance, the one that was installed almost a year now off IBB, Uyo, in Akwa Ibom State. Now, the community leader had ensured that the community youth watch over the solar-powered street lights. Now, I had gone through there this morning, and the solar panels, they are still there. The street lights, they are still there. So the community, they are still enjoying from it. So good. The NDDC is not living there. The people are. Okay. Now, on this NDDC summit, let's go to the social media space and see reactions of people towards the upcoming summit. Now, someone has shared thoughts on how to help shape the future of our communities. They said, is NDDC hitting the mark, or do we need a chart correction? Ooh, Jennifer. Okay. Voice this is matters. Good. Your voice matters. Now, I believe we as a people in the Niger Delta region, we have concerns. And in fact, for the NDDC to even call for a stakeholders meeting means they've been listening to the people. They've been listening to complaints. So now they want you to bring it officially to the table. They have stakeholders who will be there. The president of the Senate will be there. Even international stakeholders. International stakeholders will be there. the Minister of Niger Delta will be there. So it's a conglomerate, I should say. It brings together different stakeholders. The IOCs, we were talking about divestment now, and the people are crying that these people should not just divest, but look at the deplorable state of environment which
they are about to leave behind.
Exactly. So this is where the discussion should be held. Bring all of them together, air their opinion, and look for the way forward.
Okay.
The Niger Delta deserves a lot more. The oil resources, we're talking about resources of the country here. So I believe that this discussion should go further.
All right, we'll take the discussion to other aspects right after this break. Don't go away.
In a world of overwhelming voices where everyone has different opinion on different issues, it is important that we bring the core issue to the fore. Join me, Nancy Banigo, on Softline as we lend our voices to inform and influence your thoughts and actions. This is not just mere talk, it is an invocative program that touches the core of our existence.
No matter wetin I see, enough fit make mouth heavy to talk am. That's now why people dey talk.
You know wetin dey worry you, but you no go fit take help yourself.
In this kind of situation now, what if they really no talk to una? Wetin be the way forward?
They go bury our chairman on Thursday. We go remain here.
Make we talk good where we dey see good, and where we know say we no dey see good, make we also dey talk am.
No woman, no mother deserve to know the grave of his child.
The bank manager, the bank executive, they are the one the government should first pay.
People They Talk, the show on Monday to Friday by 5 p.m. on top ADBN TV.
Rebuilding trust. Manipulated and conned over time, Nigerians are confused about whom to believe. Trust is the foundation upon which organized progressive societies are built. Trust embodies important elements of life. This 5-letter word, trust, has a deep meaning for whom we are and what we have become. It means being transparent, reliable, understanding, sincere, and truthful. Without any of these elements at play, societies become chaotic and completely disorganized, while anarchy sets in. Lies, half-truth, and deception have created mistrust of the government and, by extension, impacted the everyday lives of the citizens. Many of the woes being witnessed in Nigeria today have evolved from a lack of or betrayal of trust. We must retrace our steps.
We have so many issues to deal with or to grapple with. Issues of economy, employment, poverty, and so forth and so on. And trust shouldn't be one of them.
The trust deficit is a huge problem between government and the government. Individuals and their communities, politicians and their constituents, the armed forces and the civilian populations, private service providers and consumers, the courts and litigants, traditional rulers and their subjects, and even between religious institutions and their faithful. But how did we get here? And what should we do to rebuild these broken elements?
If you go to the market, I have witnessed it, where even the measuring board is, indented that way so that, it will appear full, but you are buying just half of what you are told is being displayed for sale.
Something went wrong. What, when, and how are issues needing interrogation, and these are the questions that this platform will regularly attempt to address and provide informed and cogent answers to. all human relations are based on trust. It is a hard thing to say you have lost faith in a system or humanity. When a house is defective with leaky roof, broken walls, faded paint, and non-functional amenities, of course, the right thing to do is to fix it. Join me, Sani Mohammed, and others on this platform every week as we discuss ways to rebuild trust and put our house back in order.
You're welcome back to Niger Delta today on ADBN television, and thank you so very much for staying tuned to the program. Let's move on now to arms and ammunition, as the influx of weapons can heighten existing conflict and lead to a rise in violent crimes. The Niger Delta has a history of militancy and armed groups that could use these weapons to further their activities, resulting in more violence and instability. Recently, the Nigerian Customs Service has intercepted a cache of weapons and ammunition valued at about $180,000 US. An operation in Lagos led to the arrest of one of the suspects. This was just as the latest of incidents that came a day to the Nigerian Customs Service, where it seized 800 brand new guns and over 100,000 rounds of ammunition smuggled into the country en route of a private port in Rivers State. The weapons were concealed in a container and shipped into the country from Turkey. Since then, the issue of arms seizure has dominated discussions in the city of Port Harcourt. Joining us now to discuss the matter is correspondent Achinonu Temple, who is going to bring us up to speed on the incident that took place at the One Seaport. Hello, Temple. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Temple. Okay, we seem to be having some technical hitches. But while we wait for Temple to join us on the program, Jennifer, can you imagine the impact of these weapons and ammunitions coming into the Niger Delta?
Well, we'll streamline it a bit to Port Harcourt.
Okay.
Now, if we're looking at let's start with the political situation that has been ongoing in Rivers State between the governor and his predecessor. We've had a series of protests. In fact, during one of the protests, there was an explosion.
Yeah.
Now, if we're looking at all of that, protests, explosion, we're looking at firearms, weapons.
Yes.
This means that there is so much tension in Rivers State. Now, if we're having such amounts of ammunition, such amounts of weapons in a place where there's still some bit of unrest, for me, I think it's a bit scary. So now, why Rivers? So now, in any place where there is some level of unrest, and then you're having this amount of weapons coming in, I think there is...
Is it just Rivers, or because it's the seaport in Rivers?
Yeah, it's a sea... Well, I think... now, look, okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so thank you. What is actually the situation on ground at the other seaport where these weapons were seized?
On there, what happened? About 600 brand new ammunition and over 100,000 rounds of ammunition by agents of Japan, but spotted from up to 10, but the private. So that's because of the proactiveness of the Nigerian
It's really muffled, Temple. We cannot hear you. So, Jennifer, back to you. You were talking about heightening the tension, the political tension in Rivers State. But besides that, do you know there are still some militant groups who have been subdued, who, if these weapons come into their hands, is going to resurrect militancy in this region?
Well, I was heading there. Now, when weapons get into a place where there's some bit of unrest, this is a matter of psychology here. Now, if you have a weapon in a place where there's some bit of unrest, there's a possibility that it will heighten the situation
Exactly.
there. Now, that also leads to who is sponsoring. Why is it coming in at a time?
At this time.
Of things now. So now, from Port Harcourt has links with other states in the Niger Delta. So now these things spread across. We're trying to look at restoring peace in the Niger Delta region. And we're having this amount of weapon. We've seen from the video.
That's a lot.
That's a whole lot.
That's a lot.
So
and it's actually going to undermine security agencies' efforts. It's going to make them fight more, like put in all they have to make sure that there's stability and peace in these regions.
So it also brings us to the issue of security agencies, the strength in security agencies. Now, for them to even be able to intercept this, I think it's a kudos, because there are situations where this would come in and they'll still
go
not
unnoticed.
Be aware.
Yes.
So it's a kudos to the customs and for making the efforts to ensure that there is peace in Rivers State. So now that also looks at the situation of porous borders. So this would have gone through a long route to get to the port.
All the way from Turkey.
All the way. And there was no stoppage anywhere. So it means that we have a lot to do to ensure there's security in the region.
Tighten our security, border security.
Yeah, because not just that there's also political tension, there are also people agitating for a few changes in the Niger Delta region. So we don't put the idea in their heads that these weapons are available. I think it's just best we avoid them getting to those communities.
Exactly.
So the customs, the police, the army, all security agencies, they really have to wake to the work involved. All hands have to be on deck to ensure that there is so much safety in the region.
And a place where there is no peace, economic activities are also hampered.
Exactly.
It's going to bring about maybe loss of lives and properties, and then we'll start talking about relief materials, we'll start talking about humanitarian aid.
So much expenses
and all of that, yes. And this is going to come out of the coffers of the government. If we're talking about development, we should also look at the downsides of being involved in violence, because whatever is supposed to be used to bring in development and growth will now be channeled to humanitarian aid. I hope these arms that have been gotten will be channeled to the right place, and some of them will not be diverted to where it will cause more harm in society.
Well, not just this one. There have been situations where they've gone to locations where these arms were locally made.
Yes.
Now, I believe that beyond seizures, these places should be well investigated. The process which they, we watch some movies and we see that some people who produce locally, they are recruited into their armies to work for the armies. So I think that beyond seizures, we should also look at the process of ending, totally.
Empowering them to end it.
Now, the empowerment is not just about them dropping weapons and we send them, we rehabilitate them into the society. Beyond dropping weapons, they have the skill already.
Yeah.
They know how these weapons are made locally.
Yes.
So I think it's best they are confined to an environment, because sometimes the economy could be really hard, and these ideas, people who know that this is what they have been into, could still approach them with some enticing,
mouth-watering sums to come back to what they just left.
So I believe that these people should also be kept in some enclosed environment. They could also work for the government, where they are monitored and controlled, because leaving them out in the society can sometimes
meaning
be
you're
risky.
talking about pardon first before rehabilitation and maybe inclusion into the government force or the security force.
Not really, but there should be some form of control and restriction and monitoring around them.
Well, we'll keep you up to speed, because one suspect was arrested in connection with these arms that were discovered. We hope you shed more light on where this is coming from and maybe lead us to other places where we can also curb the proliferation of arms and ammunition in the country. Still in Rivers State, a fresh oil spill has hit border community in Gokana local government area of the state, destroying farmlands. The spill, which occurred Thursday from a pipeline belonging to Shell Petroleum Development Company, comes barely 2 months after a similar incident occurred along the pipeline at different locations in the area. The recent spill is said to have destroyed farmlands and rivers, which the people depend on for their livelihood. Meanwhile, a non-governmental organization, Eco Defense Alliance, has slammed the multinational company for refusing to proffer permanent solutions to the problems of oil spill on its facility in the area. They have therefore called on the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, NOSRA, to embark on a joint investigation visit with Shell and other relevant stakeholders to the spill site in the Sugi area of Bodo City without further delay. Another oil spill in Bodo community, Rivers State. I'm sure they must have lost count of oil spills in that area.
Well, I'm perturbed with the situation of oil spill, majorly because the Niger Delta region, they are known for farming, known for fishing activities as well. And when something tampers with the livelihoods of the people, it's a major concern.
Yes.
Now, we look at, over the years, the situations of oil spill and how those communities are faring. We are trying to talk of food sufficiency. Recently, there was a collaboration to ensure food sufficiency in the Niger Delta region. And this is happening. So how do we expect that there will be food sufficiency when the soil is not fertile enough for the people to plant? People had already planted. They've already planted some months ago. So this means the oil spill is now affecting those crops. So it means that if nothing is done, that community will be suffering a lot in terms of food shortages.
And they've been suffering for quite a long time, because in 2008, there was also a spill in this same Bodo community where about 5,000 liters of crude oil product was released into the environment.
It also leads to this, the companies. If you have a pipeline linking communities, there should be some level of surveillance within those communities. So whatever happens, they are quick to respond to it. Why should, now looking at this video, look at these, you can see the green land there. So what happens to the plants around that area? What happens to the riverine areas as well? So it affects the livelihood of the people, and these communities will, the companies would come for. The companies will come up to say, oh, we are making some form of relief to the people. But I think we should look at sustainability.
That never happened in the case of Bodo, because 2008, 2009, they had oil spills. And in 2014, there was actually a roundtable discussion where there was supposed to be cleanup and remediation that never occurred, both for internal and external reasons. So for them to be having another one in 2024, it's really, really alarming. You just spoke of surveillance. Now we have security agencies watching these pipelines. It might not be as a result of pipeline vandalism. It might be as a result of worn-out pipelines. So isn't it possible that the security outfits that are there to curb pipeline vandalism also have personnel that are trained to detect these worn-out pipes, possibly recommend repairs or carry out the repairs to avoid this kind of suffering on the people?
It's not like this, where our security agencies are not trained for this, or that this is not usually done. I believe that the companies, even when these recommendations are made, it takes a while for them to react to those recommendations. And perhaps they would address the very feasible community. And those interior communities, maybe it will take a while. Okay, we'll handle that one later. So it takes us back to the people. These are the people who are suffering. These are the people who deserve the better infrastructures. So while we're talking of pipeline vandalism, while we're looking at issues of oil theft, let's look at the companies themselves. What are they doing to ensure that oil spill doesn't repeat itself in these communities? Because after these maybe there will just be an apology if there will be, and some relief
and nobody to hold them responsible in this community.
There has
so
to
they leave it like that.
Some form of sanctions.
Yes.
Make a huge payment to. Okay, I think there has been some reactions. There has been some reactions from the people online
on social
concerning
media.
the issue of oil spill. Maybe we should just look at that before we continue.
Oil spill burst in the Bodo community in Rivers State, Nigeria. Environmental rights are a fundamental right to protect. Okay, now speaking of fundamental human rights. Now, shocked but not surprised to receive evidence of a fresh oil spill that occurred in the Sugi area of Bodo community in Gokana local government area on the 4th of July 2024. And why is this person not expressing shock? It happened in 2018. It happened in 2008, 2009, and in 2014 there was a roundtable discussion that did not end well. So why should I express shock? It's now like a part of everyday living of these people in the area.
No, I think beyond the fact that nothing has been done a few times for Bodo community, the Senate had come up with some investigations.
Okay.
I think some weeks ago, come up with some investigations, especially the last one in Bayelsa, and had instructed that companies in these communities should be investigated, it should be checked.
Okay.
And so I believe that the people too should have a roundtable with the companies and look for the way forward.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. We actually feel the pain of these people because it's not easy to lose your livelihood over and over again. And finally, from Akwa Ibom State, the rainy season is here. I'm sure we're all experiencing it in the Niger Delta region. And while some are counting their blessings, many others are gnashing their teeth as the rain accompanied by torrential floods. The recent heavy downpour in Akwa Ibom State has caused widespread flooding, leading to the displacement of residents and damage of property. Residents of major streets in Uyo metropolis, including the popular Atiku Abubakar Way and adjoining areas, have been severely affected, with many businesses forced to shut down. Meanwhile, the Akwa Ibom State government had envisaged this and had put measures in place to manage the crisis. However, more effort is required as the rain that fell this morning ravaged streets and residential areas. And now we want to speak as the water is yet to dry up, because a lot of people have reactions concerning this. But the Akwa Ibom State Governor, Pastor Moino, has visited these areas and promised to construct nearby streets with proper side drains as a solution to the flood disaster. The state government has also reactivated its emergency protocol management system, commissioned a trip to assess the conditions of estuaries, and reactivated the necessary health protocols to address the situation. Additionally, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and the Nigerian Meteorological Agency has predicted massive flooding in the state for 2024 and urged the state and local governments to intensify efforts in clearing drainages and desilting river channels to avert flood-related disasters. NEMA has also been working with the state government as they provided relief materials to flood victims in Etinan, Insidibium Federal Constituency. Let's take this to the social media space as the conversation continues on the perennial flooding affecting the state and other places.
See our back road, mechanic village. See the volume of water. There is no work done here. All those floods that they say they have done. ESEC has to be called to accountability. There's no work done here. The flood is even higher than before.
We're being forewarned by Niger.
Imagine the relief. We are driving one way now. Look at the volume of water.
Mentioned amongst those states. That is the reason why I have
this is about what we
in the environment and what we can do to ensure that
mechanic village.
But of course, I don't because that's the issue of the long run. Let's go back to this. Hello, good morning.
This is a back road by the village. Master stranded on the road.
Lots of cars are spoiled.
Okay, so what you need to do,
More. OPP today.
Now, this is the situation of flooding in Uyo and some adjoining areas in Akwa Ibom State. Now, it is very easy and quick to blame the government because now they're saying the work they said they did, they have not done anything. But the people still get to dump refuse in gutters and water drains.
Yeah. Well, before, I think let's get from people. Let's look at this reaction. It said, same flood year in, year out. The same thing pushed my colleague from Lekki to Akwa Ibom, and he has never looked back because small rain sitting room got flooded and laptop was submerged, car submerged, and fishes everywhere. My guy run.
That is serious.
Wow. And
okay, this was the distribution of relief items to persons affected by flooding.
And this one says this flood was a menace in Uyo, mostly around IBP axis. If you know, but government then fix the problem to a reasonable extent. If not, we would had a difficult story in Uyo. But yeah, bank on incompetence just to prove a point, and that's from Joshua. And this one is Mayor of Uyo says getting Akwa Ibom State government getting a call at 17:47 a.m. that flood has killed my uncle, a director, State Board of Education, inside his own home is the height of it. Negligence that's left Uyo with no real flow to the main drainage, even in a priority housing area, a wet housing. Well done. Wow.
Wow. Death recorded.
Okay. Well, this particular issue of flood, I think it's multifaceted.
Yes.
Now, we had heavy rains this morning. And beyond that, let's look at Saturday. In the state, the state declares every last Saturday as a cleanup to ensure that people enter their communities and clean up properly. Now, if we look at activities of people during this cleanup, sometimes it's very painful that people don't even understand the extent of harm they bring to their own community. During cleanup, you see people who clear up whatever they would need to clear up, grasses, sand and all, and where do they dump them?
In the gutters.
Good. Now, people not just dumping there, there are other, let's look at the mechanic village, which we had seen from the video that it's a back road. The mechanic village is along that axis. They have a lot of metallic substance and all. And so sometimes during the repairs, where do they dump some of these things? In the gutters. So when government is making efforts, what are you doing as a people? What are the activities of the people to ensure that these things should be done? Now in April, the Akwa Ibom State governor had set up a committee for flood mitigation in the state. And I'm also wondering, what exactly is the committee doing to ensure that this prediction is not getting out of hand? Because if we're looking at committees set up, it means that you have work to do to ensure that the people are not suffering from flood this year, even subsequent years. So what is the roadmap? What is the plan? The activities set out to ensure that these things are done.
Okay, this is distribution of relief items to persons affected by flood in Etinan, Insidibium Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State. NEMA Uyo Operative Office distributed food and non-food items to persons affected by flood in this constituency. Now, Jennifer, you were talking about the role of the committee set up by the government. What about the people? Now, it's so painful to see that in a state like Akwa Ibom, where you still empty your trash for free, we still have indiscriminate waste disposal. Places like Lagos, it's a monthly thing. You pay to empty your trash. But for us here, it is still free. And where do you even see this indiscriminate dumping of refuse the most? Around the dump sites. It's just like, the dump site is too far. Why not just leave it here and move away? And when the rain comes, you see that these non-degradable materials are blocking drain channels, causing flooding, and we're aiming and hammering on the government
Beyond
only.
just the drainage systems, how about housing? How about minor constructions around? So you'd see someone wakes up and feels, I have been called to start a business. And they are mounting a kiosk where? On the drainage or places where the water should go through.
Past.
So they just mount their kiosk right there and they are comfortable with it. There is no complaint whatsoever. So it means that we also need to look at not just the people, we should also be looking at the regulatory agencies, the
UCCDA.
You need to look at what the people are doing and ensure compliance too.
Yeah, because most of these people who have buildings to construct or put up, sometimes what they do when they bring in their truck of gravel, they pour it into the gutters for lack of space. And they pour sand on the other side so that when it rains, they have a collection of water in the middle. By the time the work is not fast-paced as envisaged, that part of the drain is already blocked. When the rains come, it fills up and flows into compounds. So these things should actually be checked because it's not just the government, it's a collective responsibility. The government, the committees that have been set in place, and individuals should also look into this.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we also have one more social media reaction before we call it a wrap on today's edition of Niger Delta Today.
Okay, from Mayor of Uyo. Okay, I think we had taken this earlier, but he spoke about issue of negligence. And negligence comes from both ends, both the people and the government. So I think a lot has to be done to address that.
All right. And with that, we'll call it a wrap on today's edition of Niger Delta Today. We hope you join us same time tomorrow for another edition on ADBN Television, channel 258 on DSTV and 140 on Star Times. Till we come your way again, I am Awero Swogene Ebo, and
I'm Jennifer Pius. It's been a wonderful time with you.
Same
Have
here.
A great day.
Have a great day.
ADBN, Advocate Broadcasting Network.
Rebuilding trust. Manipulated and conned over time, Nigerians are confused about whom to believe. Trust is the foundation upon which organized progressive societies are built. Trust embodies